Hey everyone, I'm Airwingmarine. Welcome back to the channel and my next Escape from Tarkov video. This is going to be a video that's another Tarkov economy update, where I go through the items that are worth keeping, talk about a couple of trends, and help you get the most out of your raids. So let's get right into it. When I go through items in these videos, I look for ones that are A, not obvious, so things like bolts, valuables, or other items that are always worth keeping. Instead of those, I look for items that are not always worthwhile, but for various reasons have seen a bump, and people might be overlooking them. The rule of thumb here is that if an item is worth more than 12.5 thousand rubles per slot, it's worth keeping. And that's the rule I apply to these lists. So, for example, a 2-slot item has to be worth 25,000 rubles, and a 4-slot item has to be worth 50,000 rubles. If they don't reach those thresholds, I usually don't hang on to them. So, with that, let's get started. Now, a couple items in here. The duffel bag is kind of a weird item. It isn't worth the 12.5k per slots per se, but it is an item that doesn't take up any more slots than it fills. So, for example, the army bag takes up a bunch of slots, but doesn't give you the same. This takes up 12 slots and gives you 12 slots. So especially when you're scavenging in, it's great to stack 3 or 4 of these things inside each other if you can, because for themselves, they sell from anywhere from 12, 13k all the way up to pushing 20k and more sometimes. So if you can get a handful of these out of raid and list them, they're going to be good money and they don't take up too much slot in your inventory. Now, you can't fit some rigs and things inside of them, so if you're on a PMC side, they may not be worth keeping, but just something to keep in mind when you see them in raid, they're worth 12 to 20k. Now, on top of this is some other weird ones. So the thing about a Shamask that is great, it's a 1-slot item. You should always keep it, but don't try to put it on because you can't put it on with a helmet, right? So it won't go on here. I have to take the helmet off and then it'll go on because it goes on that slot for whatever reason. If you have a scav and you can put it on there, great. Otherwise, keep it in your inventory. But these things are worth a bunch of money themselves. So right now, they're kind of on the low end, but you see them push over 20k pretty frequently. And the same thing with the round glasses. So the Harry Potter glasses, whatever you want to call them. Right now, they're kind of on the higher end, but these things push 20, 25k. And even though they barely reach that 2-slot, 12.5, if you can do this with them and get them out of raid, that's a free slot. So if you see round sunglasses when you kill a scav boss and his guards, Rashala and his guys have them quite frequently, they're worth taking and selling. Now, your Tarkola and Squash, I talk about these all the time. You want to hang on to these things. They're always worth good money. And they've come down a little bit lately, but they're needed for the Holodink. The cooler barter, that's what they're used for. So they usually maintain their value, and they're worth their 1 slot most of the time to take out. Metal scissors. Now, I've had these listed as don't keep for a while in some of my previous updates because they weren't. They were less than 20k, but we've seen a rebound in them. They're pushing 30, 35k sometimes now. So these are now worth keeping again, at least for the time being. Syringes, also an item that I see a lot of people overlook. These things are pushing 15 to 20k regularly. So when you see syringes, make sure you hang on to those. Now, 2 items I want to bring up for people, especially if you're running a sick case or a docs case. You should be keeping keys you find anyways, just because it's a free slot usually inside of here. But the 110 and the 214 keys for dorms on customs, this blue handle 110 and 214, these should be burned into your memory because by themselves, to therapists, they are worth selling. You've got 21k for the 110 key and 25k for the 214 key. So these should always be picked up. They're worth their 1 slot, even if you can't get them into a container. Keeping them in your inventory, they're worth most than other items. Now, these 4 items here are related directly to fuel barters. They're worth a ton. Propane has gone through the roof. Now, this is on the cheap end, but I've been seeing these things push 100k, especially when fuel runs out. And people can only do the barter. These things get expensive. So they are 100% worth keeping, even though they're a 4-slot. Matches, both kinds of matches. Hunter matches right now, they've gotten cheap again because we're right in the middle of that fuel cycle, but these will regularly push up into the 15 to 20k range. And classic matches, too. These things, they get used in several different places. They're used in the red gunpowder craft as well. So whenever you see these cheap, I would snag them, especially if they're below 20k. Like, I should have bought those. I've probably already missed out on it. Well, maybe not. But these things are pushing 35, 40k when it comes time for the fuel barters. When fuel runs out and the only thing people have left to do is barter, these things get very expensive. And the same thing with pineapple juice. You'll see this drop into the 15 to 20k range, but I've sold these as high as 50,000. So I'll pick up pineapple juices all day long and I'll keep them. and then like at the end of the day or something, or if I happen to catch them right when they're expensive, I'll list them for 50,000 and sell them every time. So just keep that in mind. Some other items, and I don't want to take credit for this, but I kind of feel like it's my fault. With my video that I did talking about how to power level your hideout skills, I may have elevated the price in a few things. So right now, gas masks are super worth keeping. They're pushing 50 to 60K, and that's because you use them in your hideout to craft air filters. Now, this isn't a profitable craft, but what this is a really fast craft. It's less than 2 minutes for most people. And what it does is it allows you to power level your hideout skills. So lots of people are buying these gas masks up, and it happened right after I did my video. So I think it's kind of my fault. So sorry, I'm not sorry for that. It is just what it is. But now you've got a 4-slot item that's worth a bunch of money. And if you get them as a scav, boom, it's an instant 50K if you see it on your scav when you load in. Blue gunpowders. Now, these are something you want to keep an eye on. They are staying below the 20K range, but I have seen them push 25K a couple of times in the last couple of days. So it might be worth, if you find these in raid, keep them until you find something worth more. But the possibility of you selling a stack of these for 25K is getting more and more every day. And that's because these are used for red gunpowder. The Amelia Rye croutons. Now, these are not worth keeping yet, but I've seen them go from 3 to 4K up to pushing 12 to 13K. And that is because, for the same reason, the hideout craft, you use them to make Kvass waters, which is one of the faster crafts for power leveling your hideout skills. So you need 4 of them and 1 bottle of water to Kvass. I've been buying tons of them. I've been able to get them for 5 to 7K, but I have a feeling they may get more expensive as more people snag on to this power leveling in your hideout. Now, flat screwdrivers. I always bring these up. These are always worth a ton of money, but they have gotten even more expensive. These things are pushing 25, 30K now, which is crazy for a 1-slot. Now, don't confuse these with the long flat screwdrivers. They look very similar in world when you're picking them up, when they're sitting on a bench or something. So make sure when you pick them up that you're picking this 1-slot up, because the 2-slotter is not worth keeping. Also, something to keep an eye out for, and most people always pick these up anyways, but these Lays Tac 2 flashlights, you'll see them on shotgun scavs a lot, and also with guards and raiders. That'll be actually the flashlight that is on their weapon. So make sure you're always looking for these, and if you find them, keep them, because these sell for pretty good money on the flea market. Sometimes they're down around 23, 24K because that's where the vendor is, but a lot of times I see them up at 35K, so they're a fantastic 1-slot item. Now, when it comes to found in raid weapons, this MP9 is one of my favorites. I want to be it's very specific on what it is. The MP9 itself is probably not worth that much. Like, let's see, is it worth 18, 20K right now? Yeah, see, 18, 20K for the MP9. It's not worth that much. I think it sells to the vendor for 17K, so it's almost just worth doing that. The magazine, however, is worth 30K, sometimes 35, 40K. Just kind of depends on the time of day when you catch them. It's worth twice as much as the gun, basically. So whenever you get found in raid guns, the MP9, obviously it applies here, but a lot of guns, this applies. When you go to sell them, make sure you pull the mag out. Things like the MDR, the 30-round mag for the MDR, the Magpul 30-round mag, this one right here, you'll get that at 308 MDRs a lot. That thing is worth 30K too, 35, 40K. So whenever you get a gun out of a scav case or whatever, make sure you double check and make sure the mag isn't worth selling separate, and just sell the whole gun. This applies to pistols, SMGs, assault rifles, sniper rifles, all of them. So make sure you're checking that. Now, I jumped over this ammo. I want to talk about it real briefly. You'll see this when you're looting lots of ammo crates or caches. You'll come across ammo. Now, these 4 are the ones I like to talk about, or I guess 3 categories, if you will. KS-23 ammo is worth a ton. Star rounds can push 30K all the time. And you can craft these too, but finding them in raid is huge. But even if you find the bar ammo or the other, something Shrap 10 and Shrap 25, I think, those are all worth keeping when you find them in raid. P90 ammo, also worth keeping. If you find this in raid, even small stacks can be worthwhile. So this little stack of 13 I found here, I can sell it for 13, 15, 1600 rubles. That makes it over that one slot, 12.5K rule. And the 193, I think this is over 2000. Yeah, so you can technically find like 6 rounds of this, or 8 rounds like I found here, and it's worth selling on the market. It's worth picking up. So keep that in mind. This shotgun shell. I don't know why these are expensive. I never really used them. I think it's like a poor man's SP20 maybe, or AP20 maybe, but I'm not totally sure. But nonetheless, I usually sell these for the 800 to 900 range. You see some cheaper ones in here, but they definitely get up into the higher level. So I keep I have an ammo box here. This is my sell. So any kind of found and rate ammo, I just get it in here until I get a bunch of it, and then I sell it in bigger stacks. Now, SP13 is another home run. And I think you can thank Jesse Kazam for this one. He made a video on how the Shrimp is a pretty good pistol now with the camera. If you haven't seen his video, go watch it. It's a pretty good video. But after he did that video, SP13 went through the roof. So it's really expensive now. So if you find SP13 in raid, make sure you bring it out because it's worth, you know, this 1,500 ruble around range. And definitely outclasses most loot you will find for one slot, especially if you find 10, 12, 15 stack of this. The last thing I want to go through here is some stuff that is not worth taking out a raid. These items don't meet it. Now, some of this might be really obvious. A lot of people know the horse isn't worth keeping. A lot of people know the long flat screwdriver is not keeping. And I brought that up just because I wanted to talk about the other flat screwdriver. But cats, these things are almost never worth taking out a raid unless you need them for a task. Same thing for batteries. They used to be worth a fortune, but now you're seeing them in this 50 to 60K range. And at a 6-slot item, that means they're barely worth 10K a slot. They're heavy, so they're going to slow you down. So you could almost always find better loot. Now, I'm not saying throw these out if you have an empty bag. What I'm saying is if you have a full bag and you're very likely going to find stuff worth more than this one battery. So very often at 60K, you're going to find 3 items that are worth more than this 6-slot item. So you're going to get the same amount of money out of half the slots. Same thing for motors and tool sets. These things used to be worth keeping. They aren't anymore unless you need them. You know, it's better, even if you need a motor, but you don't need it found in raid, you're better off going out a raid with 4 items that are worth 10K, selling those items, and then buying a motor for 30K. You're going to end out above and better off for doing that. So we'll keep it right there. It's kind of short and sweet. I hope it was helpful, and I wish you guys luck in making money in Tarkov. Well, that wraps up the video. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit that like button because it helps out the channel a bunch. And subscribe for future content. We also have a Discord, links down in the description, that you can come join. We're filling up with a bunch of chill people who just love to play Tarkov. If you're looking to support the channel in other ways, we've launched a Patreon with some benefits like access to a Discord channel, constantly updated spreadsheet for my hideout calculations, and some other things if you want to go check it out over there. Lastly, thanks for your support on YouTube. It means the world to me and I greatly appreciate every one of you. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you in Tarkov.